Here's the problem. Both sides are still hurling insults at one another with little time to waste. Forget about a deal done by the end of the year. As you saw yesterday when I was in Washington, realistically, they have to cobble together at least the framework of a deal by Friday at the latest. Here's why. It would take that long just to get something marked up, conferenced out, and ultimately voted on and signed by the President of the United States, all by year's end. Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson here to say so far, so I guess not so good. Huh, Senator?
Well, Neil, how are you doing?
Very good.
The problem, Neil, is you have one side negotiating in good faith, putting real proposals on the table to solve our problems, and you have the other side not negotiating in good faith, not putting real proposals. President's budget, it's been his last two budgets been voted on 3 times. Final vote tally is 0 to 610. So that's the real problem: is you don't have equal partners working in good faith in this. You've got the Republicans who are working in good faith and the president who is not.
Well, I know you are a Republican. That's your point of view, and I understand that. But it is fair to say that you're not without sin, or your side's without sin. I mean, you haven't specified how you're going to get those $800 billion in revenues. So while you have at least put something on the table where revenues are on the table, and you're to be commended for that, it's not as if you're going to great detail to spell them out.
Well, Neil, first of all, Neil, the House has actually passed 2 budgets, which included proposals to actually save Medicare, which is the largest problem in terms of driving our debt and deficit. And that's the first point. Second point is that we don't want to harm economic growth. And the other problem is President Obama has been in office now for almost 4 years. He has never concentrated on growing our economy, which is the #1 solution to the problem. What he's concentrated on is growing government. He has no intention, nor the Democrats in the Senate, to limit the rate of growth in government, and as a result, they have no plan for doing so. So even though he campaigned on this balanced approach to deficit reduction, his tax increase is only going to solve about,
well, you're right.
I mean, 3 to 7% of the deficit.
The talking points here, and I think you're right. I think some of your concerns
are more than talking points, Neil.
Senator, I know you passionately feel about this, and you've been consistent on this, but we're beyond that now. I guess what I'm asking you is, you feel very strongly about this. A number of your Republican colleagues in the Senate, Rand Paul, with whom I chatted yesterday, Marco Rubio, with whom I chatted yesterday, echoed your concerns. So I get a sense from many in the Republican Party, revenues themselves are not acceptable. Is that right?
No, revenues are, but the way you get revenue is growing the economy. Just a couple numbers. Even with the meager economic growth we've had since 2009, federal revenues increased by $344 billion. If we just return to a normal economy like we had in 2007, when revenue was 18.5% of our economy, that's another over $400 billion. You combine that, that's $750 billion per year of additional revenue versus the president's proposal, somewhere between $34 and $75 billion, a tenth of what economic growth produces. And let's face it, by punishing success, by increasing taxes, you're going to put at risk that economic growth.
So does that mean, Senator, that if you had a deal that had revenues in there, whether they were rate hikes or, I don't know, what this other idea, closing loopholes and exemptions, allowances for the well-to-do, either one you'd be against?
Listen, I'm all for pro-growth tax reform, right, but what we actually need to see is a real plan, a proposal that we know what we're trying to compromise with, and that's what we're simply not getting out of this president. That's what's required. We have to actually see it, and this should be debated in public. This is absurd what's happening. Once again, you got a couple elected officials with their unelected staffs going behind closed doors, trying to do a backroom deal to save the financial future of America in the span of a couple of weeks. The Senate should have passed a budget. We should have a budget resolution. The committee should be working on this stuff, debating these very serious issues.
We're not going to meet this deadline, are we?
I understand that. So what we need all we're going to really be able to do here is, because the president holds all the cards. He's the only man that can sign a bill from preventing tax increases. So we may have to do a fallback position where we're just trying to minimize the damage. Okay. But I don't want to be complicit in raising any Americans' taxes, because that's going to harm economic growth. That's going to take us in the wrong direction.
All right, Senator, thank you very, very much. The shorthand on that is we're not close. We're not.